Commissioner Newman.
Present.
Commissioner O'Neill. Commissioner Mitchell. Thank you. Commissioner McCabe. Thank you.
Here's we have 4, so we have a quorum. Oh, Melanie just came on. So it looks like we have 5.
I was here, but I think I was in the public part of the meeting or something. I was saying here.
We got you. Thank you, Melanie. Director, do we have any agenda modifications this evening?
Yes, we do. Item G2 will be continued. This is the Rolling Meadows application. This will be continued to the meeting of November 19th, 2020. Then the item H1 will be continued to a date uncertain. And then item I1, which is the discussion on public improvements, will be continued to the meeting of October 15th, 2020. There will not be a planning commission meeting on October 1st.
Okay. Would you repeat the date, the Rolling Meadows? I didn't get the...
November 19th, 2020.
Okay, that's what I wrote down. I just wasn't certain if I got it right. Thank you. Okay. So at this time, I will open up to the public to comment on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. So anybody who would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. And I see we have 2 hands up, and the first one is Jennifer Knight. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm sorry. I put my hand up because I'm unfamiliar with what just happened. I have some concern about something that is on the agenda, but I thought you said it was moved, and I just want to make sure. It's Humboldt Packaging LLC. Did you say that is going to be continued to a future date, or is it going to be discussed tonight?
Go ahead.
It will not be discussed tonight. We are requesting a continuance to a date uncertain before it comes back to the Planning Commission. We will send out new notices and advertise the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. That's what I needed to know. Thank you for putting that out at the beginning of the meeting. And thank you very much for what you do for Humboldt County. I appreciate you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Public 7454. I think I recognize that number. Go ahead.
Ken Stawotsky here. I guess this is going to be a mutual appreciation night. So I'm going to appreciate maybe paying a little more attention in reading projects. And maybe my English isn't what it should be. Maybe I don't understand it. But 2 meetings ago, you did a project called Enchanted Farms LLC. And I think it was in the Willow Creek area, if I understand it. And so when I go in, I started going back just to look at a few records here. And your first thing you have is your executive summary. It has recommended planning committee, then your executive summary. And it states a conditional use permit, CUP, for 3,000 square foot of existing light deprivation. And maybe I'm not reading the next paragraph correctly, which is just right below that. It says the applicant is proposing to expand the pre-existing square footage of 500 square foot to the maximum allowable of 3,000 square foot. Maybe it's a typo, or maybe that wasn't caught. But I believe the decision you made at that time probably went ahead and encumbered the neighbors with 6 times. I took my shoes off to count from 500 to 3,000, 6 times the impact that is currently allowed or is being claimed within that neighborhood. And I don't know, maybe I'm just being a little bit nitpicky. Maybe staff's not being transparent. Maybe some mistake was made. I did not hear clarity at the meeting regarding that, but of course I don't hear everything. I'm an old man and my hearing's not perfect. The second topic I wish to address, I believe you were possibly emailed something today, and that would be the appeal of the ADESA permit that you did last week. And I kind of follow Mother Nature. Mankind is the only invasive species on this earth, and greed and lust for power are the things that seem to cause the most problems out here. And I just continue to see this green rush continually going on as that. I have a plaque my wife got for me, and I'll read it to you. And it says, "I saw that." And then it says karma. Karma's watching what happens here. And if we can't take care of Mother Nature ahead of our own greed or lust for power, desire to fill our pocketbooks, desire to expand things into Mother Nature's very special places, such as this particular valley up here in Maple Creek, I think we're lacking some really understanding of what the human race should be doing. And so I will continue to try and protect those things. I will continue to try and do what I can. Mother Nature, of course, funds me, and people go, "Well, how do you get your money?" I said, it just comes. I might spend $50,000 on something good to back certain litigation, and Mother Nature says, "Good job," and all of a sudden there's 10 times that. So I just want you to let you know that karma is watching, and it is seeing what's going on. And I really wish you would start looking at every single project based upon what you think Mother Nature would want and what's in her best interest for nature and the environment and everything, rather than putting miles of plastic out in these hills. PVC, what's going to happen? I don't think you even address those issues in anything here. Are the landfills going to be full of those things eventually? Of course they will have to be, or they're just going to blow around out in the wild. So thank you for my opportunity to speak on this. And I will continue to pull projects off so that comments can be made and so we can understand what's happening. And maybe we can get accurate staff reports. And maybe this was just a mistake. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next caller is Public 3053, please.
Good evening, Thomas Mulder. I just want to clarify, you can hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just, last public comment, I don't think I thanked everyone, the commission. I did thank the Board of Supervisors, but you guys spent a lot of work on that small cultivation ordinance, and I think there was a lot of public input to get to that point, so I want to thank you for all of that hard work. But with that being said, I also want to remind that was a public process, and it would be sad if at some point in time, even though that went through a public process, that would be changed at some point down the road, because once we go through the public process, I think it's very imperative to keep that goalpost where we decided to set that goalpost. And if we want to make new rules, we start a new game or a new type of ordinance. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak in public comment? These are items that are not on the agenda. Give a second for the delay. I'm not seeing any other hands up. So with that, I will close the public comment and we will move on to the consent agenda. And I believe we have 2 items on consent. The first item is Blocksburg Family Farms, LLC in the Blocksburg area. Is there anybody from the commission or in the public that would like to see this item pulled from consent? It looks like we have a hand up in the public, so this will be pulled. And
you should make sure that that is what was intended, because the hand just went away.
it did go away. So, Joshua, the technical person here is saying that he lowered the hand after it came up. So and that public, it's back up now. So we're going to leave it as being pulled. And the second project is HIM Management Group LLC conditional use permit on Highway 36 in the Densmore area. Is there anybody that would like this pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none? Well, that hand's still up. Oh, okay. So maybe I thought that it would go away. So I apologize. So we will pull both of these from the consent agenda, and we will now tackle these items. So do we have a staff report on the Blocksburg Family Farms LLC in the Blocksburg area?
Yes, I'll see if I can get the share screen to work. Is that working?
It appears to be.
Okay. Okay. So I'm Keenan Hilton, staff planner, and I'm here to present this evening on Bloxburg Family Farms LLC. This is a conditional use permit. It's an application for the continued operation of 11,650 square feet of outdoor cultivation. The water sources are rainwater catchment pond, a spring diversion, and a stream diversion. The processing would occur off-site at a licensed facility, and the applicant has proposed solar as the energy source for the operation. The permit also includes a special permit, and that's for the agricultural diversion and for the restoration activities within the streamside management area of the county. You can see here the highlighted parcel is the subject parcel. It is, don't know the exact distance, a mile or two west of Alder Point Road, the Bloxburg area. It's a legal parcel. The zone is forest recreation. General plan designation is residential agriculture. Here's the site plan. You can see here is the location of the cultivation. There is also a 400 square foot nursery. The project does include relocation and restoration of several pre-2016 sites and consolidation into the configuration you see here. The pre-2016 sites are shown in yellow. There was also one additional site down here that all of their reports, all of the, the biological studies and timber reports did reflect that and did address it. It was not shown on the site plan. So a condition of approval is that they shall submit a revised site plan that does show that restored site. A condition of approval is that they carry out the restoration activities as described in the professional plans that they had prepared for the site. The location of the water sources, this is the rainwater catchment pond here. There is the spring diversion here, and then this pond here is actually fed by some surface water, so it's considered a diversionary source. They have a final signed lake and streambed alteration agreement with CDFW, which in addition to limiting the daily rate of withdrawal, also imposes the standard forbearance period between May 15th and October 31st of each year. Conditions of approval require that they acquire their water right for those diversionary sources. The approximate water demand for the project is 102,500 gallons per year, which is well below the water capacity. Between the rainwater catchment pond and 8 tanks that they have on the site, they have storage capacity for 234,000 gallons. A couple there. Here is how they get access to the site. It is accessed from Alder Point Road, then onto Sunset Ridge Road, Homestead Road, which is also, I think, known as Browning Road, and then Sylvan Glade Road takes you to the parcel. They submitted a road evaluation form for each of the roads. You can see examples of the photos submitted for each, and it functions at the equivalent of Category 4. Staff recommends approval of the project with the suggested conditions of approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions of staff by the commission? Seeing none, I will open this up for public comment. As we had one person. Is there still somebody in public? Now I'm not seeing anybody in public. Are you guys? So maybe, I don't know, anybody that wants to speak from the public on this matter? Oh, now we have 7454, please, go ahead.
Alan, we're having technical difficulties on my end, it seems to be. If you thought I was trying to pull the next project, that's untrue. If the 7454 was the hand you said that's still up, that shouldn't have been up. That was your technical end as far as that being up.
Okay.
And so as far as I'm concerned, that can go back on consent. I did wish to make a couple comments on this project. Looks like basically an overall really good project. I do kind of have reluctance when your staff tells you that you're going to have the site plan redrawn. It's a little hard probably to make a decision. That's not how it normally works in the real world as far as a lot of building plans and things goes for permits. I would recommend in the future if staff, it needs to have that as a condition, they go ahead and have that drawn. Small alterations usually don't take that long and don't cost that much. One of the reasons I brought this forward, when your staff report said this is a solar array, and I strongly support the solar array. Obviously, I've been doing that for quite a while. It wasn't mentioned to you there's a backup generator involved in here, and it doesn't say whether that's a solar generator or another generator. And I want to clarify my thing on generators. If you have a small grower like this, and I think Mr. Mulder and a few people will be happy, I don't have any problem with you using one of those little Honda generators until such time as that Honda generator wears out. And they're not built like they used to be. So after 2 or 3 years, if that wears out, at that time, I would request it as a condition of approval that that generator, once it's worn out, and you're going to make a new changeover, that you would change over to a solar generator or something of equivalency to go with the generators. Now, we don't get to talk about generators. I guess that's been postponed. But I do feel that. And I also wanted people to know that a lot of these people in the meetings I attend, with John Ford, the smaller growers and things, they are happy to comply. They want to do the right thing. All they have to do is have you ask or us ask or staff recommend. They say, heck yes, I want to do the right thing. I would like to replace that generator when it wears out with something that's better and more environmental friendly. I'm not trying to unwind a lot of things that they've done, even though there is a perception out there that all these permits are pretty well stale, something that goes back, 4 years or something, should have had a timeline. I don't know if it's the negligence on the part of the applicant sometimes or negligence on the part of the county not being able to bring something forward. But, most of these things I think should have been wound down 2 years ago. And I think you do have the right to apply different solutions and different things to problems as things evolve. And I'm not out there trying to undo people and cost them a bunch of money. I'm just trying to make sure that down the road, they at least do the right thing for the environment. So thank you for my opportunity to speak. Otherwise, I find this to be a very good project. With that small little clarification, I wouldn't have pulled that off there if it had some kind of policy regarding that. And I don't think your staff report or your report you were just given mentioned there was a backup generator involved here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. So any other public that would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the commission. So go ahead, Noah.
Actually, it's just on a matter of process. Mr. Sawatsky made a mention of the generators item being postponed. I apologize. I missed the first couple of minutes of this meeting. I was a couple minutes late, but I did arrive during the discussion of agenda changes. My understanding was that item number 2, the public works discussion on measures to be taken to minimize the cost of improvements, is being continued to October, but that item 1 about the generators is still on our agenda. Is that correct, or did I miss something?
Yes, that is still on our agenda.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to clarify that for everybody.
Thank you, Dylan. Anybody else have any questions or comments regarding this project? If not, anybody want to make a motion or anything on the unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval of the item.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a
We have
question.
a second. Sure, go ahead.
Would it be a good time to include the one that apparently the hand was up mistakenly for?
No, we'll do them separately now that we've started that process. But thank you for bringing that up. I thought about the same thing, but I think it'll be cleaner to just do them separately. So let's just finish with this one and we'll move the other one. I think it'll go quick.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Was that a hand up, Mike? No, I'm sorry. I just thought I did. Okay. With that, I'll call for the question. Suzanne, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Commissioner Bongio.
Yes.
Commissioner Pellegrini.
Yes.
Commissioner Levy.
Yes.
Commissioner Newman.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yes.
Commissioner McCaver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item, since we're not sure if there was any public, I will skip the staff report and just see if there is any public, because we're not quite sure if there was anybody. If anybody from the public would like to talk about this, now's your chance. If not, we'll deal with it like it was on the consent agenda. And I'm not
Chairman,
seeing any.
Chairman,
Yes.
can I just make sure we're solidifying, because you said this, I'd like to make sure it's the named out, whatever the item is.
Yes, it is the HIM Management Group LLC conditional use permit in the Densmore area. I'm sorry, I'm getting
Thank
ahead of
you.
myself. Thank you. So is there any discussion on this from the commissioners, or is somebody willing to make a motion on this? Because I think it would have went on consent.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman. And would it be appropriate for us to put the continuances with the consent agenda?
I could ask the director on that. I think that we should do them separate, but. So we're going to do them separate since we went beyond the consent agenda already. So thank you though, Brian. That was a good idea. I thought about it earlier, but I think that we'll take them individually. So we have a motion and we had a second. Any more discussion? If not, I will ask for a roll call. Suzanne?
Thank you. Commissioner Bongio.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Pellegrini.
Yes.
Commissioner Newman.
Yes.
Commissioner Levy.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yes.
Commissioner McCaver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. So now we are going to go into item number G, continued public hearings. And the first one is the Humboldt County Fair Association conditional use permit. I have a feeling that we are going to have a lot of public participation in this. I'm going to allow the 3 minutes, but I am going to hold people to it. I'm going to let you know when you got 30 seconds left. And when the 3 minutes comes up, I'm having Suzanne cut people off because I think there's going to be a lot of people to speak on this one. I want to be fair to everybody, not trying to be a jerk, just trying to keep the meeting moving. So with that, I will take a staff report, please. We're not hearing you, I don't believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Can everyone see my screen that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so. So we're here tonight. This was continued from your last meeting, and this is a conditional use permit being sought to authorize concerts and motorsports events from the Humboldt County Fairgrounds. The applicant for the project is the Humboldt County Fair Association. I want to make sure everyone's aware we have several supplementals that were provided prior to the meeting. Supplementals 1 and 2 prior to the last meeting, and supplemental number 3 between the last meeting and this meeting. Supplemental number 1 were public comments that were received after the commissioners' packets were finalized. Supplemental number 2 included letters from the applicant, Humboldt County Fair Association, with revisions to the project scope, as well as mitigation measures, and also a letter from Whitchurch Engineering. They were the consultant hired to do the noise study. And then supplemental number 3 includes additional comments that we received since the last meeting. I want to go through supplemental number 2 right at the beginning because it has some significant changes to the project. They are reduction in the scope and scale. The Humboldt County Fair Association, it wasn't clear in the letter, but I've had conversations with them since then. They've confirmed that they intend to reduce the project to the levels that are offered. And so the original project submittal was for 10 concerts, 4 motorsports events, and the motorsports events included a mix of different activities. At this point, they're only seeking to get a use permit to authorize 5 concerts and 2 motorsports events, and the motorsports events would only be motorcycle flat track racing. In their letter, they clarify once again that the event, an event in terms of the numbering, the 5 concerts, the 2 motorsports events, is a single day activity. They offer to use a third party for noise monitoring and collecting of noise data, and also to provide the data within 30 days of each event, and to do the monitoring for 5 years following permit approval. The project is unusual in that it is county-owned land that is mostly located within the city limits of the city of Ferndale. Ordinarily, county-owned properties are not subject to local land use controls. They enjoy exemptions and immunity to that. However, in the case of each scenario, a jurisdiction such as the County of Humboldt, who owns the property, has the right to submit themselves to a permitting process. And that is the case tonight. That's why we're doing the use permit. And we're mostly doing the use permit to provide a forum such like tonight's public hearing for public comment and input on the project itself. You can see here a zoning map. This is not county zoning. This is the city of Ferndale zoning map. And you can see the red outline shows the perimeter, the exterior boundaries of county-owned properties that comprise the fairgrounds. You can see the coloring shows that the zoning at the city of Ferndale is public facility, and that a look at their zoning code reveals that public facility zoning district includes uses like auditoriums and public fairgrounds and related uses. This next slide kind of gives you an overview of the area.
Can I just interrupt you really briefly? On that last slide, the red outline, that shows the county ownership? The red outline?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I had that correct. Thank you.
Sure. And it's worth noting that this small portion is outside of the city limits, and this is a parking area that's periodically used during the fair, but the vast majority of the activities occur within the city limits of Ferndale. So the fairgrounds is comprised of a variety of different facilities, but the areas that are being utilized for the proposed project are mostly the racetrack and the grandstands associated with it. The racetrack is used for horse racing during the county fair, but it has a history of other uses. You can see in the photo the location of the grandstands. This area in front of the grandstands right here would be where a temporary stage would be erected during concert events. And behind that would be the location of a sound wall during concert events. That's part of the proposed mitigation measure. So just to get you situated, you can also see Arlington Avenue lies south of the fairgrounds, and these are the closest residential homes in the vicinity of the fairgrounds. And then to the east, you can see the complex associated with Ferndale High School.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Back to the temporary stage there. So you said behind it, so it would be on the inner part of the racetrack there would be the soundproofing wall?
Correct. And I have a slide coming up that goes over the noise consultant evaluated different locations, and mitigation for attenuation changed with how close it was to the noise, the sound equipment. And that would be the ideal location.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as many of you, likely all of you are aware, the fairgrounds has a long history of use, and those uses are variable. Certainly the Humboldt County Fair is the most high profile use that occurs on an annual basis, but it has other uses as well. And the fair itself goes back quite a ways and has kind of morphed over time to be what it is today. But just, it's worth noting that this site, in terms of hosting fair type activities, that it goes back to well before 1896. That's the date that often gets cited as the beginning of it here, but really there were fairs before that even. And in addition to fairs, as I was mentioning, it's been host to, you can see here a newspaper article from 1925 where there was a circus during the fair and band music, live band music. You can see in this table here, these are live performances that have occurred. This was information provided by Caroline Titus, who's monitored this site for a long time and had a lot of good information for us about prior concert events. And then here is a newspaper article from 1954 copy of the Humboldt Standard showing advertising an upcoming motorsports event for dirt track racing with these were automobiles. So, it does have a history of uses, but the uses that are proposed represent a change both in terms of the number of events held annually, the timing of events, and the types of events. For those reasons, it is a project for purposes of CEQA. The project in this case is the change in a lease agreement that is the authorizing document that governs the use of the fairgrounds by the Humboldt County Fair Association. Humboldt County Fair Association is a private nonprofit organization. They lease the property from the Humboldt County of Humboldt, the Board of Supervisors, and the lease agreement dictates the terms under which they are able to operate the facilities. And the lease agreement is being contemplated for revision to encapsulate the uses that we're talking about tonight, flat track racing and concert events. The main impacts that we analyzed, we did a mitigated negative declaration for the project that was circulated in early August. The main impacts that we focused on, and hardly surprising, are noise from the events themselves, the noise from motorcycles during motorcycle events and noise from concerts during concert events. We've had some conversations or some comments in response to some of the recent changes submitted by the applicant that I mentioned at the start of the presentation, attachment 2, suggesting that we need to recirculate our mitigated negative declaration because of the change in the project scope. Given that the scale and scope is changing in a way that would not exacerbate impacts, create new impacts, or require a different type of analysis than what we did in our mitigated negative declaration, it isn't necessary to change or to recirculate the document. That's common where projects change in ways where your analysis no longer is correct. The noise analysis I'm going to go through now, just so that everyone's kind of calibrated to sort of that. It's not something that you see a lot of projects with these types of issues, and so it's worth getting into it a little bit. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is a project that's located within the city of Ferndale. However, we're processing a use permit, and we're using the county's general plan as the document to govern our analysis of the various project-related impacts, including noise. The general plan for the County of Humboldt identifies the fairgrounds as a prominent stationary noise source, as well as gravel mining operations along the Eel River. And the general plan includes different ways of tackling noise in terms of evaluating the threshold of significance of noise, both for long-term noise sources and short-term noise sources. You can see here, this is a table that governs, it offers guidance on what might be acceptable or unacceptable levels of noise for long-term sources. And here you can see in this table that for residential zoning districts, that we apply a short-term noise standard of 65 decibels. Here's the same section of the general plan, a little bit more of the information surrounding it, where that table exists. But what's worth noting is there are exceptions built into this section of the general plan, because it's anticipated that there are going to be certain types of activities that will not be able to comply with the noise standards. So examples include using portable generators, using chainsaws, heavy equipment during construction activities, emergency vehicles. So in that category of uses is temporary events in conformance with a use permit. So when considering the project tonight, we've had a number of comments that suggest that because the project exceeds these noise standards at times during motorcycle racing or concert events, that we needed to do an EIR because it was beyond the threshold of significance. But the threshold of significance has a pass-through for under the use permit process for temporary events when they're being reviewed under a use permit. CNEL, or the community noise equivalent level, is the method in our general plan by which we evaluate noise for purposes of comparison to those thresholds. And the community noise equivalent level is basically an averaging over a 24-hour period of noise measurements, noise readings, and the kind of weighting is applied, as well as it's broken into different types of day and night weighting. But at the end of the day, you're given a value, and then you can use that value to compare against common thresholds and common performance standards. I presented this, I did this on the web earlier today, just to kind of give you an example of how you get to a calculation. So if you take the 24 hours in a day and you put in different noise measurements and say, you have some high noise levels between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock, at the end of the day, you would end up with a noise measurement of around 87 decibels using the CNEL standard. So that's kind of how it translates. You take all the readings, you do the math, and that's what you get to compare against these standards. When it comes to this project, noise is not uniform. There's noise from 3 different categories. But really, with the revisions to the project that have been made by the applicant, only 2 categories. We have concerts and we have flat track racing. So there is some discussion about other types of noise sources in our mitigated negative declaration in the staff report you were given. I encourage you to dismiss that because that is no longer a component of the project. We're really only talking about these 2 types of noise. The noise study used a methodology whereby they took measurements at various locations to establish the actual background noise levels or the ambient noise levels in the area of the fairgrounds. They calculated event-related noise, and I'll get into the details of how they did that. And it was both through measuring using a noise meter and calculating using data from other sources. And you can see here, there were 2 places where they took measurements. Here's what I'm told by a colleague is the Ferndale High School admin parking lot. And here is a vacant lot along Arlington Avenue those were both places where a noise meter was set up and they took measurements. The ambient noise measurements revealed that you had peaks of 76 decibels from 2 to 4 in the afternoon and 78 decibels during 8 to 10 in the morning. And the average decibel range was around 46 and 45 decibels. So this gives you an idea of without the project, what the background noise in this area is on the dates that they did and these were 1-second intervals where they were taking these measurements. You can see 3,600 data points. The noise study gets into the different noise activities, and one being the motorcycle racing. How they got to their calculations were they took 3 people on dirt bikes, they had them race around the track, they took measurements of the noise generated, and then they used math and calculation and formula to extrapolate what it would be for 18 more riders to get to the true noise level. So you can see here, this is the measured noise during the testing conditions, and this is the noise after you apply the multiplying using the math. So a maximum of 93 decibels was measured at the locations that I just showed you. And you can see that the average was around 70 decibels and the CNEL for motorcycle events, when you consider a 24-hour period, was 75 decibels. They assume that peak levels, since you have people coming off the throttle during a race, they didn't want to try to differentiate, so they used peak levels as though they were continuous if everyone was going at full throttle. They assumed a racing window from 2 to 10 p.m. That's probably fairly conservative because events will probably not go to 10 p.m. Every time, but that's what they used for making the calculation. And lastly, they looked at different ways of reducing noise, both from reducing the number of racers in an event, ending the events earlier because that changes the amount of noise during the weighted hours, and considering exhaust system treatments. And here you can see different effects into the CNEL when you apply different measures. So the most significant measure would be a full exhaust system change to a motorcycle racer's bike, and that gets you down to a 62 decibel CNEL. And the repacking, where you just work with the baffling and the can of the system, doesn't quite achieve that same level. And we went with the full system replacement, or the most significant one in our mitigation. For concerts, the analysis didn't do measuring from the site. They didn't hold a mock concert, but they did use data from similar studies, and which gives you a range of 95 to 110 decibels for concert events. They gave a window of 6 to 10 p.m. for when the events would occur. They had some assumptions about rebounding sound coming off of the grandstands because of the positioning of the stage, and they looked at potential ways to reduce the noise, once again, ending events earlier and the introduction of a sound wall. And here, Commissioner Newman, you can see the kind of data and how it relates to that sound wall placement. So if you put it at the fence line along Arlington Avenue, you get to 75 decibels, but at the back of the stage, where the near concert value is, you get more attenuation. So that's what we put in our mitigation. So the noise mitigation measures for concerts include the construction of a sound wall, the use of a sound engineer during all concert events. That way there's some consistency and the noise can be controlled in terms of the mixing board. And then for motorcycle racing, having racers submit to noise testing before they're allowed to compete in the event. Not uncommon that this occurs. There's already requirements by the American Motorcycle Association. It's just changing the decibel level, really, not the procedure. And then when it comes to other mitigation, we've established these CNEL values, as I was mentioning earlier, that are the targets that have to be hit, so that when you consider all the data during the date of an event, it can't exceed these levels. And this is based on what Whitchurch's calculations and noise measurements came up with using the mitigation and the attenuation that comes with it. And lastly, these are other mitigation measures, doing the monitoring, using dust suppressants to deal with potential fugitive dust that could result during windy conditions, and then the annual submittal of a report detailing event-specific measurements and how they adapt to, because there is an understanding with these types of things when you're doing something for the first time that you're going to be learning along the way things that need to be done and built into your standard operating procedures. And I think it's appropriate to note at this time that with the applicant's recent letter that was part of supplemental number 2, they're offering to do the noise monitoring with a third party, so it would be an independent party, and also reporting the data much more quickly than just the annual report. That would provide, those would be public records. They'd be available for members of the public who are interested, and it would provide a greater fidelity of what's happening. So our recommendation is approval. We believe it's a good candidate for the exception that's found in the general plan noise standards, given that there's very few events proposed, this certainly now with the changes to the project. And also, there's not many venues in the county where you could have an event of this sort, especially motorcycle flat track racing. There is a record of hosting events. As I mentioned earlier, the site has a long history of use for both the fairgrounds and related uses. And there's mitigation measures that have been developed and designed and incorporated into the project to help reduce noise where it is feasible. The monitoring requirements will allow for verifying that the mitigation is effective and provide for adaptive management. Alternative to that, you could consider other changes if you feel that they are warranted, such as further limiting the number of events, incorporating more mitigation measures, or operational restrictions, or omitting approval of certain event types. Lastly, you could decide that an environmental impact report would be appropriate, or that the project can't be supported. And I think it's a good time to remind you that with a use permit, there are findings that have to be made. They're included in the staff report, and the analysis is included as well. But there will always be a public interest finding where you have to decide whether or not there's a potential nuisance that would result that's significant enough to warrant not approving the project. And you have the latitude to make that determination if you feel that's the case. Even if it doesn't require an EIR, it could still be denied for the reasons in the code, in the zoning code. And with that, I'm going to end my presentation. I'm certainly available for questions. We have a lot of public comments that have come in, but to try to summarize and respond to each would be pretty daunting task. So if you have certain ones that you particularly would like an answer on, I'm sure Director Porter can help with that.
Thank you, Steve. Would any commissioners like to ask any questions of staff? Anyone? Mike Newman, go ahead.
So I just wanted to be sure, Steve, that you had said that one of the requirements for the motorcycle event would be more of a full exhaust, specialized exhaust. Can you talk about that just real briefly again?
Right. So it would be, instead of just changing out parts of the exhaust system, it would be a complete special system that would get you to upwards of 20 decibels of attenuation. It wouldn't be possible with just piecemeal changes to your existing exhaust system. And I spoke with friends of mine that ride motorcycles competitively. It's not uncommon for this type of thing. It will have a performance change for sure, but the important thing, just like NASCAR, is that everyone's playing by the same rules. So, you know, that's kind of the general principle. So it's not totally out of character with these types of events.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to be certain about that, and to make sure that that was out there for the public to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions to staff? I have one, since I don't see any other hands up. I was wondering, one of the slides said 5 concerts and other events, and I wanted to know if those were separate of the fair, when the fair is going on at the Humboldt County Fair, just so that we're clear on that all this isn't happening during the fair 2 weeks or so.
Yes, great question. Yeah, so to be clear, these are events independent of the fair. Anything that occurs during the fair would not be related to this permit. It would really be its own normal business. So they could occur at any point, but there is an event season that's kind of dictated, and it would be within those sideboards, essentially.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff before I open this up to the public? And I just wanted to put out there that I am going to ask that the director of the fair board, or the president, I'm not sure what the title is, I apologize for that, would wait till the end and would be given an opportunity to speak, because I'm sure he'll have a lot of points to bring up about things that are brought up in the public participation. So let's, with that, I will get over to the public, and we will now open up the public hearing. And I am going to hold you to the 3 minutes like I spoke before. It looks like we're already getting a number of hands lining up. So the first caller will be public 6566. Go ahead, please. I think your mic is muted. Hit *6, please.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Janet Carney. I'm a resident of Ferndale. This is an aside. I both emailed and mailed through the post office letters to you. I hope the planning department got it okay. I'm here to express my complete alarm that loud and disruptive events are going to be hosted at the fairgrounds. Do I support the annual county fair? Yes, I do. When I bought my home, it was disclosed that the fair would happen every year. I accepted it and I loved the fair. In the last week, there's been a bunch of people camping to escape the fires. I'm so happy the Ferndale Fairgrounds can provide a safe place for those people. And in the floods of 1964, the fairgrounds was a staging area for saving lives. These are awesome uses of our county-owned property. But when the sanctioned, unsanctioned motorcycle events happened at the fairgrounds in 2017, I couldn't have a conversation in my own backyard. It was too loud. I forgot what I was doing, moved inside the house, and it was still loud inside of my house. The noise was not just motorcycles, but constant chatter by the announcers over a PA system, etc. I have my home has been insulated, including the walls, which really helps at fair time, but not with this motorcycle racing. I could not escape the noise anywhere on my property. So let's be clear about what is happening here. This is not about the fair. It's about a new, very loud, lots of loud events. They're disruptive to me, and the noise is unbearable. Even with the adjustments that were just made in the last 2 weeks for the amount of events proposed, it does not change how I feel. In fact, since the Humboldt County Fair Board conducts their business in secret, I have zero confidence that they just won't simply add more events once they get the green light to disrupt this community so they can make up for their financial shortfalls. Many in this community work all week, and we deserve the chance to rest on the weekends. I value the value of my house and property will be impacted along with other residents. The proposed events could also result in perhaps a smaller tax revenue for the county. Real estate in Ferndale is very busy right now. I'm wondering if we should call all the new homeowners to be and let them know that they're going to be forced to hear outrageous noise year after year. So the term for what's being proposed is called externalized costs. I don't like buzzwords, but it means a business maximizes its profits by offloading indirect costs and forcing negative effects to a third party. I am the third party. Ferndale is that third party. So I will not accept these costs. Soon, we will be known as that cute and hellishly loud little town that we used to visit. Noisy
Thank you.
events.
I'm going to cut you off. That was your 3 minutes. Thank you. The next caller is Public 3053, please.
Good evening, Thomas Mulder here. I have to fully disclose I did not read up on this project, but listening to it, I have to comment. I know my son loves motorcycle racing. I know when that flat track race did take place there a couple years ago, it was a great thing for the community. It brought in a lot of money, and I think it's something we should support. I think actually if you can't support the motorcycle thing there with zoning ordinances, you need to figure out how to zone a piece of land to be able to have a full-time motorcycle track in Humboldt County. I think it's something that was lost back in the 90s. We had one in Phillipsville, and it brought in a lot of revenue. The county is always talking about bringing in more revenue. Now this is something that's safe, healthy, fun for kids. Kids have a blast. I personally take my son to Sacramento and Marysville this summer to race because his sports were taken away from him due to COVID. So please support this and actually even consider adding more races. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Good job. Pat Liddon, please.
Hello, I'm a resident of Ferndale, and I've enjoyed the Humboldt County Fair since purchasing my home in 2007. This initial study and MND process is about a project. It's not about the fair. As a retired engineer, I've had project management responsibilities for CEQA compliance. I understand the responsibilities of the MND, objective reviews, presenting comprehensive factual and testing data, and I understand the importance of communicating proposed impacts to those affected by a project. My primary concern is with the Section 3 environmental factors. The environmental factors were not checked for review or justification, or they were scored as no impact. These factors that I'm going to discuss, 3 of them, have potential significant impacts. Section 3.2.17, transportation. The existing use of 2 weeks a year for the fair compared to the proposed change of adding initially 14, now 7 events, March through October, significantly increased the impact on Highway 211, the city of Ferndale, the neighborhoods of Arlington, Maine, and Van Ness. The traffic flow for the fair builds gradually over the day. In the case of a scheduled event, there's a maximum flow to meet the event start time. I recommend you complete a review and have a discussion of the Humboldt County Fair attendance records compared to the proposed approval amounts, which are at this point 10,000 attendees per event, now reduced to 7 events. That's still 7,000 attendees, which ends up being 2,500. If you assumed a 50% reduction, that would be 2,500 vehicles showing up. No information about that. Secondly, section 3.2.19, utility service systems, I'm in extreme disagreement with that, giving no impact score to sewer and water systems. There is no data or discussion in that study of existing Humboldt County Fair waste system discharge or water demand. The proposed approval of 10,000 attendees at now 7 events is a significant contribution to the wastewater collection system and may exceed the treatment plant capacity, the inflow, and the time of the year discharge limitations, because now you're talking March through October with different discharge limitations. It also may exceed the limits for solid waste. And the water system demand may also be exceeded because you haven't looked at it.
Your time is up. Thank you. Next caller will be Mark Williams. Mark, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Thank you for hearing me. I am a resident of Ferndale. I live at 591 Arlington. I'm right across from the bus barn and the house that the fairgrounds has. I have lived here since 2011. I was here with the motorcycles. They didn't make any impact on my family. The monster trucks were a little bit loud, but they didn't really change anything. The motorcycles did nothing. I was here for the Willie Nelson concert and I could barely hear it from my porch, and I didn't appreciate that because I wanted to hear it. The stuff everybody's talking about, these impacts that it's going to have on Ferndale, is not accurate. I live right across the street. We're not impacted by this. The noise and the dust from the horse racing is more than the motorcycles ever made or a concert ever made. A sound wall and everything like that is nowhere near necessary. I'm right across the street. It doesn't affect anything. We have people here that want to complain about everything and they want to make a mess. But I'm just here to say that it's really not affecting anything, and I'm right across the street. I've got my neighbor here that lives 3 doors down, and it doesn't affect his house either. Thank you. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Mark. Next caller would be Stephen Avis, please.
Oh, God. Thank you. My name is Stephen Avis. I'm a retired land use planner. One of the things that concerns me is that you will be looking at approving or adopting a mitigated negative declaration. A mitigated negative declaration presumes that all impacts have been reduced below a level of significance. Staff is attempting to use a bypass, trying to say that because of the noise element, you can allow sounds higher than that. That may be true for meeting the general plan guidelines, but it does not obviate the need through CEQA to mitigate the damages or mitigate the noise levels. If you want to allow the motorcycle races, even though you know that there will be significant impacts, and you think that it's a good idea and think that's fine, you can do that with a statement of overriding considerations. But that can only occur if you've also completed an environmental impact report. So my suggestion is, if you're going to use a mitigated negative declaration, you need to provide additional mitigation measures to reduce the noise levels below a level of significance. Trying to use an exception from the noise element does not qualify. That in the staff report was only applying to monster trucks in the first place. That's why a sound study was done for the motorcycles. The motorcycles still come in as a typically unacceptable level according to the noise element of the general plan. That's a significant impact. So your choices are, if you want to be able to use a mitigated negative declaration, is to add sufficient mitigation to that because it's not low enough, or have an EIR and declare a statement of overriding considerations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next caller will be Mark Drone.
Hello, thank you. We're residents here in Ferndale as well, and I just want to ask that you look at the number of signatures in favor of this that have been sent in. I know it's an overwhelming number, and it's that simple. There's a lot of support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller is Jay Russ.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners. Jay Russ. I own a residence at 1078 Rose Avenue in Ferndale. Let's keep this into perspective. This is Humboldt County's event site, 65 acres with a racetrack that's been used as a racetrack for 100 and however many years. These people that are opposed to this are, you know, they're not acknowledging the history of this racetrack. I participated in the inaugural flat track race in 2017. It was a great success. I think the decibels were in the 80s. People came from Washington, Oregon, Nevada to compete. We have a great opportunity here in Humboldt County when all those neighboring areas to the east of us, to the south of us, are 100 degrees in the smoke. We have a racetrack that's in the 60s in terms of temperature. People love that. People love to come to these events. It's an opportunity for the county and the Humboldt County Fair Association to use the facility for what it was intended. Fully support the expansion of use and the approval of this conditional use permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. Michael Moore. You there, Michael?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I didn't unmute. I'm Michael Moore, and I have a residence at 710 5th Street. I'd like to address the relationship of this project in terms of a general plan type decision that you might make. A decision like this for a public facility typically takes into account the context of this proposal with everything else that the fair or the fair board or even the county board of supervisors is considering over a multiple number of years. And that means that this project has to fit somehow in the context of any other range of projects that will take place at that facility. Frankly, I don't know what that range is. The Fair Board of Directors is pretty careful to make sure that I don't know what that context is, and whether the Board of Supervisors does or not, I'm not aware of that at all. So since this is coming up as if it would be a recurring use, then I would suggest that the Planning Commission could close in the permission, if you grant this, slightly and limit it in time until you have more assurance about the range of uses that will be considered in the future and which might impact the community. Finally, the last piece I would add is that noise is only one potential significant impact that ought to be on the table. The others include the public safety element, and certainly having that many visitors in town can and has in the past impacted the capacity and the capability of the police department for public protection. And finally, the wastewater that was mentioned earlier is something that has to be taken into account somehow, either in terms of a payment in lieu of some of the impacts or improvements that would not harm the septic and disposal system of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Or Michael, I'm sorry. Paul, you're our next caller.
Hi, my name's Paul Nelson. I live 540 Arlington Avenue, directly across from the stables and the grandstands. Lifetime Humboldt County resident, 18-year resident of Ferndale. The fairgrounds under previous managers has been way underutilized. I think the more events we can have to keep that facility going, money coming into town. I know the money coming into town is a bad word, but money coming into town to help with our economy. And it's, as one other caller said, it's the major event center in the county. We've got a lot of naysayers and hand wringers in this town that just don't want anyone to be happy. And I think the more that can happen over there, the better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any other public that want to speak? I thought we'd have a lot more. Oh, we have one more hand pop up. Jennifer Raymond, please.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I am a resident at 1057 Fifth Street in Ferndale. As you know, this hearing is not about support or lack of support for the Humboldt County Fair or the Humboldt County Fair Association. This meeting is not about the future of the fair or the future of the fairgrounds. It is about whether the environmental impacts of the proposed projects, motorized sporting events and amplified concerts, are adequately addressed by the documents that have been submitted to you. And the answer is a resounding no. The noise study submitted for this hearing is incomplete and inadequate. The study did not address all of the proposed events, and the noise impact of the events that were addressed extends far beyond the 2 locations where noise was measured. Most importantly, the studies that were conducted clearly indicated that noise levels could not be mitigated to an acceptable level. All of the information provided by the applicant indicates that the proposed events will have a significant environmental impact that cannot be mitigated. And as a result, according to California Environmental Quality Act, this project requires a full environmental impact report. Without a full EIR, approval of this project is unacceptable, and I am asking the Planning Commission to recognize and respect CEQA and to require a full EIR for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a lot of names on this list, but I don't see hands up. Is there any? That could be for other issues. So I'm going to ask one more time, is there any more public that wants to speak? And if not, would the director of the fair like to speak? And I see a hand just pop up. So public 0711, and then we'll have the fair director, please. Go ahead. You have to unmute. *6.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. I wanted to say that fairgrounds are the heart and soul of our community. Fairgrounds are the essential part of our infrastructure necessary to state and local communities to respond to natural disasters and emergencies. Fairgrounds serve as command centers for the Office of Emergency Services Homeland Security, law enforcement, and FEMA. Humboldt County Fair is currently being used by the OES for the wildfire evacuees and displaced animals. Fairs are now facing an uncertain future as they are funded by the revenue they generate from their annual fair, sponsorships from the community, and annual allotment. Fairs are having to reinvent themselves in order to survive. The Humboldt County Fair is seeking to make additional interim revenue through some entertainment events that could include concerts and motorized events. These events would bring entertainment to an area that is starved for entertainment and some money to the fair in order for it to survive. We are not seeking anything extraordinary. We just wish to support ourselves like the other 70+ fairs in the California network and give our community their much needed enjoyment through entertainment. I've been on the fair board now for over 20 years, and we have only had one concert in 10 years, Willie Nelson, 2011, and one motorsports event in that time. Unfortunately, we need a partner promoter for these activities, and those kind of opportunities don't come around that long. The fair has spent 2 years preparing for their secret permit and much revenue. Their fair wishes no harm to our community that we love. We only wish to supplement our income when the opportunity arises and provide enjoyment to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Would the director of the fair like to speak? I see it. Unmute yourself, *6 if you do.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, this is Andy Titus, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd first like to address not having public meetings because I've been on the board for 3 years, and we've had public and media at every meeting for a portion. Every board that I've ever been on has had closed or executive session. We are no different, but we are under the Brown Act for the last few months, and we have had public comment at all of those. So if anybody in the community would like to attend our meetings, like always, you are more than welcome, and you are incorrectly informed if you feel like you can't. My next thing is when people say that they support the fair, but they don't support this, those two things go hand in hand, because there is no way anymore to generate enough revenue off of a 10-day fair to support the facility and all the maintenance that we have to put into it for 365 days. So if you support the fair truly in your heart, then you should be supporting this to allow us to generate revenue to support ourselves. Another thing is that I've stated before that everybody seems to overlook. This is going to bring money to our shops. These are going to put people in our hotels. These are going to have people eat in our restaurants. The economy isn't very good right now, and this is an opportunity to bring revenue into Humboldt County. The fair brings roughly $8 million into this community in a 10-day span. I don't have any idea the amount of money that these events would bring into the community, but it would be a significant amount, I'm sure. Obviously, we would like to make money at the association level also, but it would be a great revenue for Humboldt County and for Ferndale, the community itself. One other thing I'd like to touch on is You know, we are trying to change, and we are trying to be more transparent in everything that we've been doing. And I feel like that's very noticeable for the people that want to pay attention and look at that. I understand there's people that don't want to see that, and they've already made their minds up, and they don't want to look at what's going on. But look at what we're doing right now with these fire evacuees. You know, this is the time in our country and for the community of Ferndale, we need to work together. We need to quit fighting against each other and try to do something good. Let's bring some good, clean family fun to Humboldt County and to Ferndale. I understand that there could be a few days where it's not perfect, but we're trying. We have totally changed what we were proposing, and most of that is based off what I heard these same few people talk about at the city council meeting, and now they're coming up with other issues. So I feel like no matter what we do, there's certain people that we're just not going to win with, and I have to realize that we have to quit trying to please everybody, and we have to do what's best for the association to move forward. Again, I invite anyone that wants to be part of our meetings to be part of our meetings. They're the last Monday of every month at 6 p.m. The agendas are posted in the window of the fair office, and they are also going to be posted on our website here shortly. I would like to thank everyone that's commented positively and negatively for taking the time out of their night. And I would like to thank the commissioners for giving me the opportunity to speak. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Andy. I said I wasn't going to let any more public, and we were just going to have Andy speak on behalf of the fair, but 2 people put their hands up. Now we have 3 people. So I'm going to allow these 3 people to speak, and that's where I'm cutting it off so we can keep this thing moving. So I already said I was going to do it once, and this is where I'm going to draw the line. So Arnie Peterson, please. Technical people. Go ahead. I guess you're on an old version of Zoom, so we're going to try some technical stuff here to see if we can get you in. Try, Arnie. Go ahead, Arnie.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Arnie Peterson. I'm a direct descendant of Dr. Theodore Dwight Felt, who started the Humboldt County Fair. He started over in Ronerville, and when the state decided to start their own kind of fair, they moved it over to Ferndale. I grew up with the fair. I loved the fair. I loved horse racing. I started handicapping horses when I was 14 years old. I strongly believe in the Humboldt County Fair, and I want to preserve it. But again, as far as this fair board, they are possibly the most incompetent group of people I have ever encountered in my life. They have, over the past 7 years, they have run that fair into the ground. They have spent their reserve. They have lost money every single year. And we need to give up on this group. We need to replace this group of people. They are absolutely irresponsible, and it's time that we recognize that. As far as motorcycle racing, I live at the corner of Arlington and 211. That is the cross section of the 2 test sites. And I experienced both the monster trucks and motorcycle racing, and it was horrendous. And I experienced the testing, and the testing was intrusive. The testing was disruptive. And I was standing next to Miss Regley, the student intern, when she conducted the testing at each site. This is ridiculous, And I ask that you just stop wasting our time. I'm going to fight this till the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Bill Dexter. Go ahead, Bill. Unmute yourself. *6.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The little blue button was a clue, wasn't it? At any rate, Mr. Peterson and I have conducted a rather extensive legal and technical analysis of the proposal by the Humboldt County Fair Association. And one of the things that our research shows is that the Fair Association, above and beyond all of the testing that they've done with the negative declaration of the impact of the motorcycle races, is that at the bottom line, they have no standing to set aside the Ferndale sound and land use ordinances that limit the level of sound and noise pollution. And when I say they have no standing, I'm saying they have no legal standing. In our analysis, and we've published this and submitted it as an exhibit to the Planning Commission, we cite 3 important legal interpretations that include Supreme Court of California, a Superior Court ruling, and interpretive opinions by the current Attorney General Xavier Becerra. The overwhelming high-level legal opinions all conclude that any non-governmental organization performing a non-governmental event must comply with the local government's regulations and ordinances. In the final analysis, and I think this is important for the Planning Commission to recognize, and for the Fair Association to recognize, this is a dead-end path for the Fair Association and the county that will end up with legal precedences basically not permitting the events to go forward. Now, I recognize it is a long and steep climb over the California Supreme Court and the key witnesses of the California Attorney General. But the pragmatic approach to this, in my opinion, I'm an analyst and a consultant, a risk manager. The pragmatic approach would be to consult with counsel before spending a fortune on an EIR, because in the end, the legal obstacles are insurmountable. That's a conclusion of our report. I invite you to read the submittal that Mr. Peterson and I submitted and draw your own conclusions, but it's based on a lot of legal research. Thank you.
Thank you. Johanna Rodoni, please. You're muted still, *6.
Hi, this is Johanna Rodoni. Thank you, commissioners, for considering our interim use permit. I'm a Fair Board Director, and I take it very personally what Arnie Peterson had to say about us. The fact of the matter is that fair income has been declining for several years for reasons beyond our control. Income from horse racing, which used to be a fairly steady and reliable contribution to our fair's financial well-being, has become more and more problematic, mainly due to a decline in racehorses statewide. Our small county fair competes with larger horse racing tracks, and the larger tracks are increasingly asking for a larger piece of the pie at the expense of small operations like Ferndale. County fairs used to be heavily subsidized by California Department of Food and Agriculture. That has changed. Seeing these trends, the association is seeking other sources of revenue, such as holding interim events. The fairgrounds is an aged facility, and it is also county owned. However, the costs associated with managing and maintaining it lies mostly with the association. A group of very dedicated volunteers committed to the continued success of this important county venue. Our Fair Association is celebrating its 124th year of operation, and as a director, my passion is to continue the legacy. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19, the fair was canceled this year, further diminishing some of our crucial revenue and a great loss to the county. As an association, we're always seeking additional fairgrounds. We are currently in the process of completing several ADA projects as mandated by the state, as well as improvements to the many buildings and other parts of the facility. For the last several years, our association has been raising money via fundraisers, and we have developed a robust sponsorship program. Although these programs have greatly helped the bottom line, they simply are not enough. In spite of the fact that we had to cancel the fair this year, we were still able to put on the junior livestock auction, which raises hundreds of thousands of dollars for the 4-H and FFA youth in our community. And we had another very successful year in spite of the COVID-19 restrictions we were under. I just urge you to support our permit. We would like to continue this fair forever, as long as we can afford to do it. And if we aren't able to raise additional sources of revenue in off-fair events, there's no way that the fair can continue as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Last caller will be Paul.
Hi, this is Paul Nelson again, 54 Arlington. Please.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, Paul, if you already spoke, you had I didn't realize that you were.
Okay, can my neighbor talk? I'm at his house. Here you go.
Okay, I'll allow that. State your name.
Mark Williams. Hey.
Did you speak earlier also?
I did.
Then I'm not going to allow you to speak. You only get one shot at it. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to be fair to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, I'm going to close the public comment section of this and bring it back to the commission. All right. Any questions of the commission? Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
I just wanted to start out by doing an ex parte disclosure. I just wanted to let everybody know that I had an opportunity to tour the site with Andy Titus to see where exactly the proposed events would be in relation to the neighborhood and the residences, and that was very helpful. And that's it.
Thank you, Brian. I see Melanie has her hand up. Go ahead, Melanie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I have a few comments. I just wanted to start in with the noise part. So as we know, the noise is one of the main sources of potential impacts that were considered in the MND. And just so the public is aware, noise attenuates really, really quickly. So it decreases exponentially. So for example, if you have a point source, it attenuates by 6 decibels as you go out. In this case, it's a line source. So it's going to decrease by 3 decibels every time you go out by a factor of 10. So for example, if you've got by 10 meters, if your line source was like 100 decibels, let's say, and it's not going to be that loud, by the time you get out to 10 meters, which isn't very far away, you're going to go down to 80. Now, once you go out to 100 meters, you're going to go down to 60. Once you go to 1,000 meters, which is a kilometer, then you're down to 40 decibels, which is, as we all know, not very loud. So to address Stephen Avis's comment, and I really appreciate looking at the CEQA documentation in that way, I don't think, to use CEQA language, that there's fair argument here that we would need to do a full EIR, because noise does attenuate so quickly, and we're dealing with existing facilities. We're not, in another area. I kind of scoured to find any other examples where there was fair argument for an EIR based on something similar, and the only one I found was one of the ex-wives of Wozniak, I think her name was Cindy, up in the hills of Santa Cruz, who wanted to hold some weddings. And it's in rolling vineyards, and everyone went crazy, and the Sixth Court upheld that. But, you know, there were no existing facilities, existing events. So I hope that helps everyone understand how quickly the noise decreases. So by the time you get out to a kilometer, even if you started at 100, you're down to 40 decibels, which is very low. Now, my second comment is more just, you know, on the perceived stress of having the event. So I think it's unfortunate that some people feel that no level of discomfort can be had for, you know, something that is part of a community, something that other people in the community enjoy. So part of the, you know, part of being in a diverse community is being able to accept that other people have hobbies that may be different from yours, especially when you live in a rural community. And I also wanted to share that, just in case you think, oh, well, I don't have to hear it, I basically have the same thing in my backyard. So I am really probably the closest, or one of the very closest to Redwood Acres. And we have the same events, you know, several times a year. And I personally don't participate, and I don't love the sound, although some people find it nostalgic. You know, you have to tolerate a certain level of, you know, other activities in order to be in a community. And so I would just say that, you know, I think it would be great if we all remember that we can't be 100% comfortable all the time with everything that everyone else is doing. And just to promote public school, I think that helps in bringing that around. So I hope that helps. So just those two comments on the legal part, the CEQA part, and on the, you know, perceived stress of the human environment. And in case it isn't obvious, I'm in favor of this project, and I don't think we need to do an EIR, and I would be very comfortable making the findings that we're being asked to make tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Melanie. I see that Noah has his hand up, and then Brian after him. Go ahead, Noah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this is, I guess, sort of piggybacking on the point that Melanie just made, but I wanted to credit a couple of the speakers, Stephen Avis, Jennifer Raymond, maybe others who raised the question of whether this is a project that can be approved with a mitigated negative deck versus an EIR. You know, there's all these other issues, you know, will it be good for the economy? Do we think the Fair Board is well managed? Do we live nearby or don't we? But those are not actually, those are really not the basis upon which we're supposed to make a decision. But we do need to make a determination that CEQA has been met for a significant project. And I will also say that I have been reminded with regard to this project by a couple of people in the Garberville area that the Southern Humboldt Community Park had to get an EIR to do public events. And yet, I think the logic behind that, I know it was many years ago, was that was starting a sort of categorically new use for what had been essentially farmland. And the fairgrounds obviously is not farmland. So, you know, I will put it on the table and say I'm in support of this project. I mean, I'm in support of reasonable mitigations. I think those mitigations have been met, but I do want to make sure, because it's, you know, a project like this is very likely to be challenged on appeal or in a lawsuit or whatever. So I want to make really sure that we have met the proper legal standard for saying that this project can be approved on the basis of a mitigated neg deck and that an EIR is not required. And I guess I would welcome, at a certain point in the conversation, I would welcome hearing from Director Ford or from Amanda Freeman, the council tonight, to really clarify what is the standard that we decide whether a project requires an EIR versus an MND. Thanks.
You want to take that now or you want to come back? The director would like to answer your question now. So before we move on, he'll go ahead and answer that question.
So there's always the argument of what is the objective standard in terms of determining whether or not something's a significant adverse impact or not. Typically, what is used is a combination of two things. One is the CEQA guidelines appendix G, which is the outline for the mitigated negative declaration. And so we have cited that, we have worked through that, found that the impacts can be mitigated to a less than significant level. And, you know, the other thing that is really kind of an important component here is the general plan does recognize that while there may be some impacts, noise generation, that if they were ongoing and placed in proximity to like residential, an unacceptable.
Just lost your volume.
I'm frozen. Okay. Sorry for the technical glitch. But the general plan does identify, as Mr. Lazar pointed out, that there are noise levels that if they were ongoing would not be appropriate. But the general plan also identifies that there are circumstances in which, did I just lose it again?
Yeah. Some reason we're having technical difficulties. Bear with us.
I can still hear you.
You can, okay. I am back. The irony is I know that I've gone away when I don't hear myself on the chairman's computer.
You can turn it off.
So what I was attempting to explain is that the identifies that there are circumstances in which there are temporary limited term events that even though the noises may be a little bit higher, because they are temporary, limited in scope, that they can be deemed acceptable based upon the determination of the decision maker, in this case, the Planning Commission. So what we have attempted to do in the mitigated negative declaration is to approach it from both angles. One is to mitigate it to the maximum extent feasible, one with the motorcycle tracks or the flat track racing to require the modification to the exhaust system, and then the hay bales associated with the concerts. And based upon that, we have found that with that mitigation, the impact is considered less than significant.
All right. Hopefully that answers your question. With that, I will, Brian Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a couple of general comments about the fair, because there's a few places here where we have to consider whether or not the fair organization and the fair are performing a service that's in the public interest, and if this is in the public's best interest to hold these events. And I think that the fair provides such a wonderful opportunity for young people to have activities and to keep busy, to raise livestock and have an opportunity to show them. It really provides opportunities for young people to avoid a lot of many bad things that they can be getting into. So I think that the fair truly does perform a public benefit. Moving on to the matter at hand, I really want to commend the Fair Board and the applicant for being willing to reduce the number of events and mitigate a lot of the impacts that it would have on the community, and reduce the number of events in response to some of the public comments. It's really nice to see a project that has so many letters that we received in support of it, as well as constructive criticism so that we can help adjust the mitigation measures. With all of that said, I know other people need to comment, but I'd like to make a motion so that we can continue speaking in context to a motion. So I'd like to move that we adopt the mitigated negative declaration, make all the required findings for approval of the conditional use permit, and adopt the resolution approving the Humboldt County Fair Association conditional use permit subject to the recommended conditions.
Second that. Oh, well, Melanie.
That was a tie. Okay, pick a number between 1 and 10. I don't know. I'm going to say that Mike got it. Melanie, not trying to put you down there, but I think Mike was just a little bit quicker on the draw. So Mike is the second. But we still have some hands up to have and need to have some more discussion. So we have a motion and a second in favor of the project. Mike, your hand was the next one up. Did you want to comment on anything?
Yes, thanks, Chairman. I did want to point out to the public and thank the Fair Board for listening to the public comments and scaling this back. I do believe that the fairgrounds is a public area there, and with their mitigations that they've undergone, by taking it down to just 2 motorsport events, which are the flat track racing, which seems to be very popular and wanted, especially since Southern Humboldt lost their track some years ago. I think that would be a bonus to have that back in Humboldt County. With the mitigation of the specialized mufflers, the keeping the sound down, that takes care of a lot of the noise factors. Then concerts, I'd love to see more of the name singers and groups come back into the area here. I really hope that the fair is good at attracting those back here so we don't have to travel, and I'll pay a little extra ticket price in order to just be convenient to be in my backyard. So thank you, Fair Board and the director of the fair in listening to the public. The majority of the public is for this, that live in the Ferndale area that will be directly affected. I live in Eureka, and I too live in Myrtle Town, and hear the Redwood Acres Motorsports events as they come around. I may not be as close as Melanie, but I'm still just down the street a little bit. And if I'm annoyed at any of the noise, I close my doors. I'm able to keep the noise out to a certain degree. Otherwise, I just turn up some music and go about my business. Thank you again for allowing me to voice my opinion here, and I'm grateful that we're able to have this come before the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mike. Ronnie, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to echo, and applaud the Fair Board for thinking outside the box and trying to come up with different ideas to generate and expand their revenue to keep the fair going and keep it here for generations, as it has been. I also want to echo what Mike just said about scaling things back to try to make things workable and offer, mitigation efforts to try to appease some of the issues that were brought up during this process. And I also want to commend our director Ford and our planner Stephen for their expertise in this area and take their recommendation wholeheartedly that this isn't, required of a full-blown EIR, as some have mentioned that they believe it had. And I think they've done a really great job in presenting the evidence and information to us so that we can make the best decision that we can moving forward. And I'm fully support of, scaled back, to what they were willing to do, and 2 motorsports events, which are very popular. And the concert, I would love to go to concerts locally also. So that's the end of my comments. Thank you again.
The concept of going to a concert.
Yeah, the truth. As usual, I usually wait to hear what all my fellow commissioners have to say, and then I chime in. I got 2 points. I'd like to really speak again about what Jay Russ said. There is a large, and when I say large, there's a lot of people that would love to have a venue to come to in the summertime when they're living over in the valley in 100+ heat, and come over not only as spectators but to participate. Heard it when I used to travel with my kids on traveling baseball teams, especially, but we talked about a lot of different things, and the motorcycle racing was something that was actually discussed. So that's the first point. And the second point is the fair has been there for 121 years. I think we get too caught up in the technicalities and the CEQA and the law when we really, on some issues, should just be looking at the common sense, saying they have to be able to have functions at a place that was designed to have functions. I've lived here all my life. I've been to a lot of functions there. I live within sound of Redwood Acres, and I've been to a lot of functions there, and I listen to the stock cars go round and round. I don't necessarily like that, but I don't get upset about it. I know that's part of what goes on. So I think, and it's been said, we need to look at the big picture, and the fair has to be able to survive. This is a way for them to survive. It's a way to bring a incredible amount of money into the county. People, when they're on vacation, want to spend money, and Ferndale's a neat place to spend some money. So let's support it. So any other commissioners that would like to speak? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the table. Brian was the motion and Mike was the second. Any more discussion about it? Or I call for the vote. Seeing none. Suzanne, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bongio.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Pellegrini.
Yes.
Commissioner Levy.
Yes.
Commissioner Newman.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yes.
Commissioner McCaver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. The motion carries unanimous. Usually we take a break a little bit before this time, so we'll take a 10-minute break now before we move on to the next item. Thank you, everybody. Continued public hearings, and we have 2 of them, or well, actually we have one that's a continued public hearing, and the first public hearing have both been asked to be continued. The first one to November 19th, that's the Rolling Meadow Ranch LLC conditional use permit in the Blocksburg Myers Flat area, and that's to be continued to November 19th. And the Humboldt Packaging LLC record, on in the Trinidad area, and it's continued to a date uncertain. So I would like to have a motion to continue those 2 to their respective dates.
So moved.
Anybody? So
Second.
Lonnie's the motion and Mike is the second. Any discussion? Not roll call vote, please, Suzanne?
Commissioner Bongio,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Pellegrini,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner McCaver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimous. So we will now move on to item I, discussion and the consideration of sending a letter to the Board of Supervisors disallowing the use of generators. Discuss use of generators and the impacts on the environment, and consider sending a letter to the Board of Supervisors requesting a policy change to disallow the use of generators. So with that, I'll take a staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Boncho. This is being brought back at the request of the Planning Commission, and it relates primarily to applications that were filed under 1.0 or the CMMLUO. The CMMLUO did not regulate the use of generators with the exception of the noise that's produced. Whereas in the CCLUO, the ordinance does limit the amount of non-renewable energy that can be used associated with cannabis applications. So the primary discussion here really is related to the use of generators with applications that have come in under 1.0. I would point out, and I think that this is important to point out, that at the time the CCLUO was being considered, and you will probably hear this over and over again tonight, is that when the Planning Commission considered that ordinance, they felt very strongly that the ground rules, the regulations that are being applied to cannabis cultivation should not be changed on applicants. And the Planning Commission actually inserted a provision within the CCLUO stating that all applications filed before December 31st of 2016 would be subject to the requirements of the CMMLUO and not the CCLUO, because there was a concern with fairness in changing the regulations. That was adopted.
Mine muted mine, so I thought that. I'll unmute it.
Turn it down while he's talking.
Turn,
is talking.
turn what
Your
down?
volume.
Is that better?
Yeah, you're back on.
So the basic idea was that the CCLUO did commit to implementing the CMMLUO provisions for CMMLUO applicants. And that is the policy direction that came out of the CCLUO. So I would just identify that there are two things here to be overcome. One is the policy relative to generators, and two is the policy of the CCLUO. Actually, it's not a policy, it's the law, that applicants that were submitted under the CMMLUO would continue to be considered under those regulations. And I know that that gets confusing for everybody, but that's why we often refer to either the CMMLUO or the CCLUO. And so with that, I'd be willing to answer any questions and receive the Planning Commission direction.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just a quick question for the director. I know them as 1.0 and 2.0. Is that what you're talking about there?
So if I understand the question right, is 1.0 is the CMMLUO and 2.0 is CCLUO. Apologize for that.
All right. Noah, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the director's introduction. I think this is an important topic, but I just want to make clear that I didn't miss anything. I mean, I know we've had a number of public comments on this point, but unless I've missed it, the staff, the department is not making a recommendation at this point. We're just sort of putting the topic on the table for discussion. Is that correct?
The topic for discussion, and it was brought back because at meeting before last, the Planning Commission had wanted to send a request to the Board of Supervisors to change the regulations relative to the use of generators in cannabis applications.
Yeah, and I'm not, maybe it was implicit in what you said, Director Ford. The rules are what they are. The policy behind those rules, you reminded us of. So is it the department's position at this point, in light of that history, that, is it your recommendation that we keep the rules as they are? And I guess I just wanted to make clear one other thought, which is that I think most of us, maybe all of us, are pretty wary of changing the rules on applicants who have gone through the process, who've already spent a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years working towards getting a project to come to this commission. I think we at least have the opportunity to say there's a different set of rules that we are going to apply going forward for new applications that come in next week, versus changing the rules on those who have already been in the process under either of the two ordinances that exist. And so I guess I just wanted to tease that question out about what we might do, what we might recommend or to the board out of this issue.
So if I could.
Yes, please.
So the CCLU already does not allow generators and requires 80% of all energy as a primary energy source, and requires that 80% of the energy come from a renewable source. And that is either by putting in wind, solar, or buying carbon credits.
Okay, thank you for reminding us of that. So yeah, so then this issue doesn't apply to any new applicants that come forward. It only applies to those under the original 1.0 ordinance. Yeah,
that is correct.
That's what this is really about. Okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Melanie. You're silent. You're not unmuted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for the director. The policy implications were what we were asking about, and obviously it's going to be limited. But I was wondering if staff had looked into any kind of incentive. So rather than policy change necessarily, or trying to touch what we already approved, offering any new incentives.
Through the chair. So that is something that's being discussed actively at the board level relative to offering incentives through the Measure S program or Measure S tax, and tax incentive as a way of encouraging the use of renewable energy rather than generators. So let me just say, I don't want to be too much of an advocate either way, but just from a policy background perspective, the county has typically taken the position of wanting to be incentive driven, incentive based in terms of how things function. And so it would be at this point where there's a set of regulations in place, providing some other form of incentive, financial incentive to go ahead and make those changes rather than using the stick and changing the regulations.
Great. Yeah, market-based initiatives usually work a lot better. So thank you for that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will now open this up for public comment. It appears there's only one hand up, but there's quite a few people on the list. I don't know if they're just left over from before, but the first one is Nadeline DeLapp. Good evening, Nadeline. You're muted still. Oh. You there? Nadeline? You unmuted now.
Now you should be able to hear me. Okay.
Yes.
Technical difficulties. So Nadeline DeLapp, Humboldt County Growers Alliance. We submitted a couple page written comment to the commissioners at about 5 o'clock. And so as an organization, we represent hundreds of licensed operators, and many of whom are operating under the MMLUO. And because they are still in the queue with permits that have not yet been approved, could be impacted by a decision by the commission to change its policy on generator use and change the law. Anything that looks like that is what we consider moving the goalpost, and we are adamantly opposed. That being said, I understand where the conversation is coming from, given that the commission approved a new cannabis project a couple weeks ago with 2 500 kilowatt generators. So we understand why the commission's being had. That being said, talking about generators and can't only on cannabis farms is inappropriate. If we're going to have a conversation about generators, we need to have a conversation about generators across the county, how generators are used with homesteaders and with ranchers. Within that, generators for mixed light operations are defined into 2 categories by the state of California, mixed light 1 and mixed light 2. Mixed light 1 is a pretty low energy use. It's defined as under 6 watts per square feet. Mixed light 2 is greater than 6 watts to up to 24 watts per square feet and could effectively be considered indoor, but in a greenhouse. So if you are going to start talking about generators, and if that is something that people need to discuss, one, I say, do not do it on Ordinance 1.0, folks. If the discussion is about something moving forward into the future, I ask that it be opened up across the board as we look at generator use. If people are interested in that, looking at the difference in how generators are used by cultivators and landowners. There's generator use for flowering, there's generator use for accessory use, generator for nurseries, etc. And, I really ask that we as a community and or as the commission determine what is the problem that you're trying to solve for. Is it fossil fuel use and climate change? Is it because we're afraid of fire? Or is the problem with noise and air quality and wildlife and neighbor concerns? Because depending on what problem we say is what we're trying to solve for, we're going to get different answers. And with that, I thank you for this evening, and I will step off.
Thank you, Nadeline. Second caller is Public 3053. Star 6 to unmute.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thomas Mulder here. I just want to clarify you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
All right, so I want to start off by, you guys bring up CEQA a lot, and there's a baseline study of CEQA, and I've said this before, that's what was existing. Whether we like it or not, that was what was existing because there was no regulations in place. There was mountaintops being bulldozed, all kinds of other environmental things. So we put this baseline study into play, and that gives us somewhere to work off of. I know many people don't like that baseline study, but it's better than where we are headed. I've said this before, if you do decide to try to do some sort of generator use policy change, that is moving the goalposts. I'm going to remind you, as I spoke a little bit on earlier today, that you just passed that ordinance for small cultivators. And if they see this, that you're moving goalposts, they may get turned away. I think the goal with regulations was to bring as many people into the fold as possible. And I think that's imperative that we keep that public trust with the county government. There was lots of public participation in the development of Ordinance 2.0 if somebody wanted to change those goalposts at that point in time. I personally partook in almost every single meeting, even though Ordinance 2.0 didn't really apply to me. So I just want that to be stated. The PG&E timeline, for myself personally, I've been in the process for almost 3 years, and I'm only a quarter of a mile away. So sometimes it's not, there's financial issues, and then there's logistical issues. Due to COVID and air quality, I've had multiple rescheduled for even a site visit. This conversation has, oh, am I cutting out?
No.
Oh, this conversation has created a bunch of anxiety, and I know a lot of people are very, very concerned, and I don't want to create more anxiety when we're in people have done a lot of work to move forward in the process. There's many people that are tens of thousands of dollars into this process, and I don't feel that you should move the goalposts. And I want to remind you what Director Ford said, that language about what the rules were. And it was very, very adamant in Ordinance 2.0 not to change the rules on 1.0. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Thomas. Next caller is Public 7454.
Ken Sawatsky, and I'm not really trying to change anybody's goalposts. It's just you have 4 quarters, and eventually the game has to be over. I mean, are we going to be looking at these same permits still coming forward from 4 years from now? And does it come down to one of two things? Either it was lack of due diligence on the people obtaining the permits, or lack of efficiency in the planning department. And I don't see why Mother Nature should have to suffer because of either of those two things. So part of what I think needs to happen, and it should have actually happened, in my opinion, 2 years ago or something, those who are doing extremely good due diligence and are very close to getting their touchdown, I don't feel like moving the goalposts from those people. I do feel it's proper to ask them if they have the ability, and if you have any kind of a person, when their system does go away, their generator goes away or something, that they consider, instead of spending close to the same amount of money on a new diesel generator and continuing the problem, that they just be asked nicely and develop policies and carrots. I strongly support the carrots rather than sticks. And I think this is something that is quite doable. There is angst because it seems to be a 5-quarter football game, and we're headed towards 7 overtimes or something here. It's time we actually have deadlines, and you have carrots to go ahead and promote those, and staff and the participants in there are enabled to bring their projects to fruition. So I'm not slamming this thing, but I am saying it does need to close sometime. Everything else does. It's a little bit like if you were working under the old general plan that we used to have there that said most of your development was supposed to happen in the Blue Lake area, and it was out of date. Well, we're out of date as far as technology goes on the generators. Things are moving fast. And just whatever we can do to carrot or incentivize the people in the 1.0 to go ahead and follow 2.0. And I don't care if they have to be paying less taxes or something. That's great. I think that's where the county's money should be spent, to bring these people into what I feel are more environmentally friendly and conscientious things. Good luck with PG&E extending anybody's lines anywhere. I mean, with what they've got, they barely can manage what they have. So anyway, I like to work with them. I think they should come forward to the supervisors so we can have that discussion. In fact, that was what was requested by some prior speakers in the past. So let's do that. It doesn't have to say let's just get rid of generators, but let's bring the discussion to the table so we can all try and work some system out. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Next caller, Wendy Ring. You there, Wendy? Unmute. There you go. Oh, you did it for a second.
Okay, now I am, right? You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah,
you're good.
I just wanted to add just to the discussion that burning a gallon of diesel puts 22 pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And that I understand that it's not fair and hard and to change the rules when permits have already been requested. But if there were incentives, I think in terms of, I don't know, processing time, economic incentives, some kind of a sort of low carbon certification. This this pod was grown with clean energy because it's a significant amount of climate pollution, and we're having a hard time getting our greenhouse gas emissions down as it is. And with the expansion of those that we're seeing, we could negate every single thing that we do if we don't attend to this. So I'm really happy that you brought it up and want to just encourage that conversation to happen.
Thank you. Next caller is Public 8463. Go ahead and unmute yourself, *6. 8463, are you there? Oh, there we go. You're unmuted. Go ahead and speak.
Oh, shoot. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Ah, got
yes.
it. Okay. My computer's not working, so I'm on the phone, and it's very difficult. So this is Wendy Kornberg, and I wanted to comment because I very much support the environmental discussion that we're having, and I agree that generator usage should start to be limited, and even, incentivizing is great. I could pretty much guarantee that if there was an incentive for, off-grid solar panels or something that was at very low to no cost supported by the county to get rid of generators, I don't know anybody that would say no to that. That being said, trying to put cannabis cultivators in a different a different group than the rest of, all the other industry that we have in our county seems like another unfair disadvantage to the cultivators, especially those that have already applied, gotten their permits through, and are just waiting on county approval or their final compliancy agreements or whatever that might look like. Trying to tell them that now you no longer get to use the generator and you have to, somehow figure out a way to get some type of alternative energy to your very remote property quite often. That seems like a very unfair disadvantage to put those people in. And I think that at this point, the county and the community have had enough discussions that, and enough, really this has been a difficult process. And this doesn't apply to me. We already have our conditional use permit. So, I'm not speaking necessarily for myself, but just for what I see from the community, that it's been a very long process for people. And to have people be so close to getting a permit and then pull the rug out from under them with one more thing, it really feels like going down the straw that broke the camel's back situation. So if we want to talk about environmentalism and we want to talk about, diesel generators and how bad they are for the environment, that needs to be a blanket thing that covers the county and all industry, not specifically just cannabis cultivation. So thank you all for your time tonight and for this discussion. I appreciate it.
You're muted, Alan.
That too. Apologize. Yeah. We just lost our internet a second ago, so I wasn't all the way back up. Thank you. So Reed Mountain Farms, please.
Oh, hi, is this me?
Yes,
okay.
It is you.
Thank you for having me. I like to say one thing to the carbon footprint when she talks about burning diesel. I mean, I think we're all understanding that we'd like to change the climate for the better. We all have kids, most of us do. And so I guess one thing I'd like to put out there is there's this company, it's called Power Labs, which uses gasification. You still use a generator, but you burn a wood product. So something to think about. I am an applicant under 1.0. let's see. I got a quote from PG&E about 1.5 million. And I guess my question would be, if I use PG&E, would they simply turn up their dial to burn more diesel for me? They're not going green, just wondering. Let's see. My business plan and resources, I've, let's see, expanded to the state based on, let's see what here. Western 1.0. Oh boy. So I guess basically what I'm trying to get across is, it's hard to speak here. Yeah, we've been in this, you know, it's hard for us to have trust in going through this whole process for 3+ years. It doesn't seem like we've dropped our feet. There's been multiple complications, you know, with COVID, and even before then using agencies who have shut down. We were left without support for a number of months when Manhard shut down, had to find our feet and keep going with this. But it's a challenge to keep up with ongoing rules. And I would ask, like, if you're going to ask us to, you know, go green, I have one solution. Other than that, I don't really know if going green is PG&E to you, or is going green solar to you guys? It'd be nice to have some definitions on that. So let's see, are there any other points? Complex. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. It's just hard to keep up when you guys seem to keep giving us a carrot dangling in front to keep going and changing when we've had our whole plan set up under, you know, a certain ordinance, like the guy was saying earlier, a certain plan, and now it's getting changed. And there have been people who seem to have gotten their permits already, with generator use. So I'll let you guys keep going, but I would like you guys to look into what is it actually you want to get rid of as far as generators? Is it the carbon footprint to the environment? What is exactly the topic there? So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public that would like to speak? Lucy Gulch.
Hello, this is Carly with Lucy Gulch, and we are in the hopefully coming up for our CUP here within a few months. And if environmental impact is truly the main concern as to the origins for this debate, we would like to point out that if we're going to bring up the question or the comments about how much a gallon of diesel, how much carbon a gallon of diesel puts into the environment when it's burned, we should also be looking at how much an acre of cannabis grown outdoors removes from the environment as well. It seems that, you know, I'm not sure if studies have been done or not, but I know that cannabis tends to be a great carbon neutralizer. And so if people are kind of coming into this carbon neutral equation, I mean, not people, but cannabis companies and cultivators are coming into this as carbon neutral or close to it, what more can we really ask of companies? We are all trying to work towards a more sustainable, regenerative growing style. And yes, I would agree with the previous speaker that we do mostly have kids and we want to leave plants better than we've come into it. And so it's a difficult thing to wrap my head around singling out the cannabis industry in general when generators are used countywide by a number of people, including homesteaders, ranchers, and even people here in town when PG&E fails to be able to provide electricity and power to their communities.
You still there?
Yeah, I think that everything has been said that I really wanted to say. Dylan has really hit the nail on the head, and we're in very much agreement with HCGA's previous comments and most of the speakers. So just wanted to reiterate and stand up for what we feel is correct.
All right. Thank you. Next caller is Margot Advisors. Unmute. *6.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, this is Kelly Flores with Margaret Advisors. I just wanted to remind the commission that this is not a new concern, obviously at the county level, but also at the state level. Generators that are over 50 horsepower are already required to have AQMD certification at the state level. We've gone through this with a couple of our farmers, and this is actually very difficult to receive with any generators that are more than a few years old, and certainly any that are imported from out of state because of the California requirements for how these engines have to pass emissions requirements. So that's for the larger generators, as well as the requirement that exists that generators can't be over 60 decibels at the property line, so that the farmers already know that they have to maintain the sound level. And so that, you know, to a certain extent addresses that concern. As other folks have mentioned, PG&E is very expensive. Many of our farmers have looked into dropping PG&E lines, and the quotes that they got were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just not a viable option for them. However, they do want to do the right thing. And so fortunately, many of them are looking into solar and are working to try and move towards renewable energy. That does take time. It is a significant investment, requires a solar array, battery banks, inverters. It's an expense. And it is something that most of these folks, would love to get assistance in doing. As Wendy mentioned, these folks, they want to do the right thing. Many of them are stewards of the land, and they really need to be given the tools that they can to help this process. The other thing I wanted to mention is that by 2023, the state actually is going to require, especially mixed light and indoor, have renewable levels of energy that is consistent with their local utility. That is a state requirement for all cannabis farms that are using, have those significant energy footprints. So that the state already knows about this and has put that in the regulations. So this isn't new. We are concerned that if there is not the strong support to help folks move into renewable energy, and instead it's done by insisting on changing the regulations and essentially potentially kicking these people out of the system.
Seconds.
If they get kicked out, you have no oversight, no regulation, no ability to monitor their impact or to improve these farms. So we just wanted to bring those points to your attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any more public that would like to speak? Seeing none, I will close the public comment section and bring it back to the commission. Looks like we have Noah has his hand up. Go ahead, Noah.
Did you say me?
I said Noah, but.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that this item was on the agenda. I have been one of the people, I think many of us have been concerned about the impacts of generators. In fact, it's fair to say that generators are something that everybody can agree that we hate. But I think there's a number of issues that this conversation clarifies. One is that we're only talking about projects that were submitted under the MMLUL, the original, the 1.0. Okay, so I see Director Ford nodding his head, and I just wanted to make that really clear for everybody. Director Ford, can I ask you, since we are talking about this, how many projects are in the queue that are under that ordinance?
So a rough estimate, there's probably about 1,000, and there's probably in the neighborhood of 700 that involve generators.
Okay. Okay. And with that being said, you know, I think one of the things that this whole process of regulating the cannabis industry has done is to bring some issues, some impacts, some environmental issues, some neighborhood issues to light that that frankly affect a lot more properties than the ones we're talking about here that are seeking cannabis permits. I really don't like generators in the hills, and I don't think anybody else really likes generators in the hills, except that there are a lot of reasons why generators are out there. So, so I just wanted to, I just wanted to underscore a couple of things that people that I know, not, you know, in any way related to me, no ex parte disclosure required, but you know, Natalyn from the HCGA submitted a letter. Tom Wheeler from EPIC, which I'm still associated with, submitted a letter, and I thought they made a couple of really important points. One is that EPIC makes the point that there is a meaningful distinction between the sort of operations that require incremental low wattage electrical use to supplement, to add supplemental light at the fringes of the season. And those are basically ways of supplementing what is largely an outdoor type of operation. I guess what I'm saying is there's mixed light and there's mixed light. You know, there's mixed light that is basically pretty much outdoor, but with some supplemental lighting. And there's mixed light that is basically an indoor grow with a little bit of sunlight. And those actually do look pretty different if you look at the energy footprint that they result in. But the other point is that I think one of the things that regulating cannabis has been good for in this county is that it's putting a lot of issues on the table that have not been regulated, but that actually have a much wider impact. So I think there's frankly, really good reasons to talk about a county-wide ordinance on generator use, because generator use has a lot of impacts. And the ones that are part of permitted cannabis operations are only a fraction of the generators that are out there. So if we want to really talk about what would reduce the impacts of generators, whether you mean the carbon footprint or the noise impacts on wildlife and neighbors, or the risk of diesel spills or whatever, we should really talk about all generators. You know, again, that's outside the scope of this discussion. But if we're going to talk about bringing an issue to the Board of Supervisors' attention, I guess I am persuaded that we shouldn't just talk about generators on, you know, Cannabis Ordinance 1.0 projects. So, yeah, I guess that's the point that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Melanie, you're next.
Thanks, Alan. So a couple of things. I'm more in favor of seeing some sort of incentive for homeowners and businesses generally in Humboldt County in terms of solar generators or, you know, alternative forms of energy. Obviously, money is a consideration, and you know, although we would have reduced fire risk, the cost benefits until the state starts handing out money for having great air and everything else, which might happen, isn't there. So nonetheless, I just wanted to remind the public that, you know, if you are interested in this, you know, this should really be, I think, a county level initiative for everybody, not just cannabis farmers. And I don't know if it's too late, but if anything that's a ballot initiative doesn't need to undergo a CEQA analysis. So just for heads up on that. So back to what we can actually do in terms of planning in regards to cannabis farmers, I think is rather limited because we have already committed to several important documents. as I mentioned earlier, I would like to see incentives, but I would need to know more details. And so one of the questions that I do have is what promises and commitments were made under so-called 1.0 in terms of when their particular application gets dealt with. And this is a question that I was actually planning on bringing up anyway, just because I would like to know whether a promise or commitment has been made to go, let's say, in order of them being received, because it seems to me, and this is by no means a judgment or anything, that it just seems kind of all over the place. So I'm just wondering what the promises or commitments made actually are in planning in regards to what permits get processed first. Is it in order of being received? And my second question is, would it be possible to, depending on what promises and commitments were made, would it be possible to have what would be a very easy incentive for us that wouldn't cost us any money of having their application pushed up in the queue? But of course, if there are other conflicting promises or commitments made in terms of going in order, that might also be limited. Thanks.
Go ahead, Director.
So the commitment that was made and still.
Thank you very much. The commitment that was made and still exists is that 1.0 applications will be processed first. That being said, there are 2.0 applications that are going through right now, and that's due to a couple of different reasons. And the chief among those is that there are still 1.0 applications who have not given us enough information to demonstrate that they're in compliance with the ordinance. We can't approve something that doesn't comply with the ordinance. So we're still working with people to collect sufficient evidence from them that they are in compliance with the ordinance. I would love to say that, yeah, we can just move stuff forward and incentivize things. If everything was equal, we could. But the great holdback right now is getting complete information. And then the priority at that point is that we currently prioritize based upon a couple of things. First priority are folks that hold interim permits. We've got approximately 600 of those left. The 8 provisional licenses due to expire at the end of 2021. We need to get those 600 done before then. Secondarily is that we made a commitment to 2.0 applicants that came in the end of last year, that if they came in and applied, we would get them through for this cultivation season. And actually we were pretty successful in doing that. That's kind of over now, but that was a real push and we were able to do that. The third priority are applications for processing, manufacturing, distribution. There's a huge need for that in Humboldt County. And so when those are ready, we move those to the top of the list. Otherwise, things come forward at the point at which the application package has sufficient evidence in that it's ready to be acted upon or approved. One other caveat, situations where an applicant just will not provide sufficient evidence to demonstrate that they're in compliance. We have brought those forward for denial.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Just so you know, you're breaking up a little bit, but I have terrible internet at home, so I was able to follow. But I guess what I'm hearing then is that there really wouldn't be anything to stop you at this point in the planning department from adding an incentive in regards to solar. I mean, obviously they haven't given you all of the information that you need in terms of, sorry, I went out onto a busy street to try to find internet. But in order to actually process those, but perhaps this would be some sort of incentive. So I'm just wondering how you feel about that. Do you foresee problems in having something like that in place legally? Or do you think it might be something that be able to do? It would be a fairly easy incentive to implement. And I guess in terms of processing, I'm wondering, are we able to just, I know it takes money to hire more planners basically to process all of these, assuming that it would be a temporary thing and we would get back all of the money in terms of permits. And so, you know, I guess they would have to be temporary workers. I guess I'd like to know what the kind of the time frame is going forward with all of the different applications. Thanks.
It's funny that you should ask that question, because we just finished a process of sending out an RFP for planning and environmental consultant help. We are in the process of hiring 4 firms. 2 of them will work on cannabis, 1 will work on current planning, and 1 will specialize in environmental review. 2 of the firms can do both staff reports and environmental work. One of the subjects we need to bring up with the Planning Commission is how many staff reports, how many items, you know, complexity is going to be a variable. But are you willing to consider a week? How late are you willing to stay? Because we plan on loading every agenda for the next year and making it a completely full agenda with as many consent calendar items as we possibly can, with a limited number of controversial items. So that is our plan going forward.
Oh boy.
And as regard, and in regards to the incentive of saying, well, if you have, let's say if you have solar or some sort of renewable energy component, you get pushed to the, you know, to the top of the heap, so to speak. Do you see a problem with that? Just curious.
I don't, if that's a policy the county wants to implement as an incentive to convert to solar, I really don't see a problem with implementing that.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
Ronnie, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess with the explanation that Director Ford gave in the beginning with the 1.0 versus the 2.0, is it the commission's feeling that maybe a letter is not really necessary to the board at this point? Because we have the criteria already in place. If we want to tackle something in the future about a broader generator for other industries or other parts of the county, that's a different issue. So that's just kind of my thoughts on this right now.
Thank you, Ronnie. Mike Newman, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Director, you had cut out a little bit at the end of when you were talking about people that were in the 1.0 queue that were not compliant or were dragging their feet. What did you say? Can you recap that again?
I hope I didn't say drag feet or non-compliant.
You did not. I did.
Okay. I think the struggle is working with applicants to get the application complete enough that they demonstrate that they're in compliance with the ordinance and it's ready to be processed forward for approval. And so, you know, that requires one, a stable project description. That requires demonstration of water, you know, the soils, the biology, the road, all the different factors that get looked at in every staff report. And when we have all that information, we package it and move it forward for approval. It's just, sometimes it's hard to get all that information.
Is there anything in the 1.0 that incentivizes or deters, you know, those that are not doing their due diligence?
There's really not. our overall strategy is that we want to continue to work as hard as we can, as fast as we can with those who are diligently engaging. That will separate out those that if they are dragging their feet or if they don't intend on completing the process, that then target those in a different way. And it's not bringing them forward for approval. It may be working with them to either submit a request for withdrawal or to bring it forward for denial.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for directing us on the way that the generator use is in 1.0 versus 2.0. That was a good reminder about things there. So I have no arguments in what we need to do. Incentivizing with possibly the tax incentives that the supervisors have already implemented. You said that
looking at right now.
They're looking at right now. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I would really maybe we could put together a letter saying, please go ahead and please look at that, because we need to move forward and maybe incentivize so that a little bit more environmentally friendly use of generators would be in order there. I think that would be the order of the day tonight. For the rest of it there, I think a general generator issue for all use is probably in order as well, as a start of a discussion point, just to put that through and talk about that in this day and age. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Brian, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to say that I really latched onto something that Commissioner Newman said, which is really not to send a letter telling the supervisors how we think the rules should be changed, but really asking them for guidance and clarification. I don't like the sound of 700 projects in the pipeline that all might require generators in the hills. However, it sounds like the state is going to be potentially limiting this in a few years down the road. And how should we handle all of these projects that are allowed to follow the 1.0 rules? I think the supervisors are in the best position to know financially what tools and tricks do they have that we can offer applicants. Potentially there's Measure S monies that could be utilized to help subsidize improvements to get the solar generators, perhaps getting additional staff to focus on projects that do meet the environmental superior standards and voluntarily do it. But I really think that asking for guidance is the best way to approach it, as opposed to telling them that the rules need to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Melanie, I had my hand up ahead of you, so I get to go first. And then it'll be you. So.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Alan.
It's okay.
I just.
I guess I don't.
Through the chair. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I agree with all that. And that's the reason why I wanted to ask the director if, what we could do, as the commission really, in terms of our recommendations. At the county level, it is going to be through the supervisors. So I'm just wondering if everyone feels good about at least having those people that offer to have backup solar, some sort of renewable energy component, get pushed to the top of the queue. So, they get pushed to the top of the pile. I'm wondering if the other commissioners feel good about that, because that is something that we could ask the director about.
You want to answer? Do you want to chime in on that, or?
It really should be a policy also that comes from the board, but that certainly could be something you recommend to the board that's easy to implement.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm going to chime in on some thoughts about regulating generators. I think that between the county and the state air resources board, there's plenty of regulation out there for generators. I think it's just an issue if we want to incentivize getting away from them more. That's come up a lot. One of the points that's been brought up is that it's very expensive to get electric in many of these areas, and you know, especially back in the 1.0 day, the whole idea was to get these grows out of these areas where there wasn't this expense, and you didn't have to have a generator. So I think we somewhere lost that whole discussion in all of this, and I would say that I'd like to see them all get out of the hills, but that's probably not realistic, and there doesn't seem to be any push to do that. So move on. The fact that we're still doing 1.0 permits that are now going on probably close to 4 years. Why are we doing that in this industry, but we don't do that in other industries? I mean, in construction, if you don't show progress within 180 days, I believe is the time frame. I've never had to deal with that, but I mean, I think that's the time frame they will throw out your project. It will be no longer valid. So why aren't we telling these individuals that if you don't get me A, B, and C, we're going to discontinue processing your project and throw them out of the queue so it makes room for the next person who does have the things in order.
So the requirement there is that if people don't make their application complete within 180 days, it is automatically deemed withdrawn. We did go through that exercise with these applications, and we threw out I want to say about 600 as withdrawn. I mean, a large number of applications were deemed withdrawn and are no longer active applications. There is still the need that even after you get sufficient information to review an application that is complete enough to review, that they haven't demonstrated that they actually comply with the ordinance. And after you look at it for a while, you see, what are you doing with this? How are you addressing that? Because it's not immediately clear, and so you ask for additional information. That's the level of detail that we're at with the applications right now. I would like to say that, for all 2,300 of those original applications, that we a letter to each one individually written telling them exactly what they needed to do, but there was no way to do that with 2,376 applications. There just wasn't.
Yeah,
and may I also say, I think that 2,375 of those were absolutely incomplete. Over 2,000 of them were probably a crude map, an application form, and a filing fee, and that was it. We have dealt with something that I don't think any other jurisdictions ever had to deal with.
Well, maybe the discussion needs to be about how we fine-tune the process now that we've been doing it for going on 4 years, and it seems to just be bogged down. I know that's not our place to deal with, but it sounds like that's one of the big issues.
I'm going to violate one of my own principles, and that's not to debate with the commissioner.
Yeah.
But I a little bit defensive and say that each year we finish more applications than we did the year before. And one of the things that we're finding is in the 2.0 applications, we do not accept an incomplete application. They're absolutely complete when they come across the counter. Moving forward to action. And like one step, they come in, they come to referral, they come out, they go to action. And so there's a real important lesson in that.
Thank you, Director. I'm sorry. Jesus. A long night, long day. Any other discussion? Anybody want to come up with some direction to give the director to take to the supervisors? It seems like that's what we were supposed to do tonight. Is that what your thought is, Director?
Well, this is entirely your choice. I've heard a bit of a consensus around of wanting to encourage the board to complete the work of developing in financial incentives to converting from generator use to renewable forms of energy. I've heard at least the idea of incentivizing the use of renewable forms of energy in terms of the application processing, that if they come in and convert their application to the use of solar, that they go to the front of the line. And so I think that a simple letter just encouraging the board to adopt those incentive policies would be perfectly appropriate action tonight. If you would give me that direction, I'll either prepare a letter and send it, or prepare the letter and give it back to you for your signature as the chair.
Is that okay with everybody else?
That's right on the money to me.
I'm good with that as well. Thank you, Director. So with that, we'll move on to the next item, which I believe is, sorry, I got. So we need to have a motion to move the Public Works discussion on measures which can be taken to minimize the cost of improvements to October 13th.
15th, I believe.
I wrote 13th. I'm sorry if I misunderstood you. So to the October 15th meeting. Anybody want to make a motion to that? Mike? Motion?
I will. Yeah.
I'll second.
Melanie, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Suzanne?
Thank you. Commissioner Bongio?
Yes.
Commissioner Pellegrini?
Yes.
Commissioner Newman?
Yes.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Commissioner McCaver?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimous. And unless the director or anybody else has anything else to speak about, you will.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
My question is, the director said that there was not going to be the first Thursday of October meeting, October 1. Is that correct? And we only have one. We only have the 15th then in October?
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
We're not going to meet on the 4th or the 5th then. We're not going to meet on the 29th. No, just the 15th.
Just October 15th.
Okay.
So any other questions? Seeing none, we will adjourn this meeting. I'm not even going to go through the roll call tonight. All right. Good night, everybody.